Hi guys, welcome. Video number 4. I know I keep saying video number 4. Long story short, I finally got around to deleting the one I did because I didn't like how it came out. So this is officially video number 4. Um, where to begin? So much has gone on. I know the last video I made was back in March, early March, late February. Um, yeah, baseball season hadn't kicked off yet. So one of the reasons you see me in my Red Sox outfit is because baseball season's in full swing, pun intended, and the Red Sox beat the Orioles tonight, so I'm really stoked about that. We got to get back on the ball, man. We lost two straight to Tampa Bay. We got to get rolling. Pun intended again. Um, I'm here today to talk about comedy. Why I love it, when I found it, and why I don't plan on changing being a comedian despite everything I'm gonna do, everything I've done. I tried to be a rapper. Failed miserably. I leave that to my brother in Houston. I was a Special Olympic athlete. I am no longer. I can pretty much safely say that I can roll away with 22 gold medals and not want to go back. The only reason I would go back is not because I missed the team, but because I missed the thrill of competition. No disrespect to the coaches, the parents, the athletes themselves. I've always been a loner in that sense that I just want to compete. If I'm friends with a teammate, that's purely by coincidence because we have to get along. But I've always wanted to compete, and that's what I've done. I spoke about 22 gold medals. Currently, there are now 18 on the wall. One was given to my brother, who took with him to Kansas when he was hired for the army. Two were taken by a former personal trainer of mine who became one of my close friends. She was also a sergeant in the army. She's in Germany. One was taken by a very close friend of mine before she moved down to South Carolina last summer. And finally, one more was taken by a little girl who she liked it, so I gave her one. I didn't give her one of the big ones, so still got all those. Um, but yeah, back to comedy. I decided to give comedy a try simply because it was a way out for at a very rough time. Um, Comedy, what began as an outlet for my frustration, turned into what is now a budding, growing passion of mine. My goal as a comedian is not to outshine George Lopez or guys like George Lopez or Gabriel Iglesias, guys like those. My job isn't to outshine them. My job is to create a different legacy. Um, that legacy being that I'm a wheelchair comic. I'm a wheelchair comic who's doing stand-up comedy. Can you find the irony there? Let me know. Um, as a comic, there are things that you have to follow. There are rules you have to follow. Number one, don't heckle your fellow comics. I had a hard time learning that. Don't heckle your fellow comics on stage. If you're gonna throw out a joke as a heckling comic, do it maybe once or twice, or when you feel you have an opening. But don't have the answer to every joke because you're gonna get your ass grilled. And my first experience of that wasn't a very good one. It was with a comic who is now very good at her craft. She's very good at what she does. Uh, so, she has a Shakira joke that I absolutely love. But I'm not going to say it because that's officially copyrighted material. Um, my first comedy show, unofficially, was in 2012. I tried it. The rule is you're supposed to laugh at fellow comics' jokes. My goal was if I can get a natural laugh, and by natural I mean it's not forced ha 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 laugh at every joke. If I can get a natural, like ha 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 laugh your ass off laugh, then I've done my job. That's the only goal I've set. And again, it's not to outshine George Lopez and be a part of his legacy because I'm crafting my own legacy as a Hispanic disabled comic. Um, my first official show again was in 2012. I failed miserably. Took a year off, then wanted to try again. Um, so I did, but that was after going through some very rough stuff. On December 18th, 2012, I think. On December 18th, 2012, my father, who I was searching for 5, 6 years, passed away of a heart attack in El Salvador. Um, the only reason I cried was because those who knew him well cried. But for me, I didn't care. He wasn't a part of my life for 24 or 22 years, so I had no reason to shed a pool of tears for a guy. Um, on December 20th, 2 days later, I would lose my grandmother from my dad, my stepfather. I would lose my grandmother from his side. She was a very sweet lady. I went to Boston for the very first time to visit her because she had come from El Salvador. Hence the reason I am a Red Sox fan, ladies and gentlemen. I went to Boston, discovered the culture, discovered the city, fell in love with its history and its baseball team. And here I am now as a Red Sox fan. Whew. Um, so she passes away December 24th, Christmas Eve. Sadly, I have to break up with my girlfriend. She broke up with me on Christmas Eve after being together for 10 months. Long distance relationship after being in a relationship for 10 months. That was grueling. Then I find out I have to go into rehab for surgery. Also grueling. But that was kind of a good thing because it was an escape. I spend the whole month of January, early February there. Come back home. My grandmother, who had just come back from El Salvador from vacation, she didn't like the cold weather, so she went to El Salvador for vacation. Um, Man, this is the hardest thing to talk about, really. But sadly, about a month later, on March 16th, while I was at Special Olympics practice, my grandmother would pass away. She would suffer a heart attack, and that'll be that. She passed away. Aside from the death of my mentor, that was the hardest loss of my life. And the heaviness just continued. I battled the grief of 3 consecutive losses. I was already in constant pain, so I was taking painkillers and pain medication, expired pain medication at that. Um, and then um, we get the news that my brother was officially ready to be assigned for post in the United States Army. Um, Again, another hard loss because yeah, he had already moved out, but he was leaving. I wasn't gonna get to be in arm's reach of my brother for the first time ever. I mean, ever. And that was really hard because even though my brother and I never got along, and we weren't like those brothers that you see on TV, those soap operas that they get along and they hug each other. But when I need my brother, he's there. And my brother is also one of my biggest heroes now. So, Private First Class Vasquez, if you ever get the chance to watch this, thank you. All right. So after my first debacle in comedy, I decided to try again in 2014, early 2014. Actually, no, early 2014. I wasn't as good as I thought I would get, but I managed to be something, which is more that can be said. Um, I tried it. I did it. It worked. I got invited to more shows, and I got more natural laughter than I thought. And again, keep in mind this was just to keep me going from being depressed. This just kept me going. It became a great experience. Not only did I get to meet some of the new up and coming fellow comics, but ooh, excuse me, but they got to be some of my closest friends, some of my best mentors when it comes to laughter. One guy in particular, the DC comedy scene is very hot. So Ralph Cooper is his name. I got to meet him and another cat named Alex Starr and another cat named Jesse Rivas, and just more cats that you meet, the more you learn. And I've always said this in writing, but I've never said this out loud. Those three individuals that I just named were some of the best influences uh, that you could learn from when it comes to being a comic. From Jesse, I learned that you're going to have bad nights and you're going to have good nights. But if you let the bad outweigh the good, what have you really done as a comic? From Alex, I managed to learn not only how to control yourself, but how to control the crowd, how to make the crowd follow you, how to make the crowd pay attention. That has been a key factor in me continuing to be a comic. And then, of course, there's the big guy. I call him the big guy, Ralph Cooper. Uh, the guy that taught me to be me. The same persona that I have outside, off stage, I'm cracking jokes and I'm making a mockery of myself. Take that to the stage. That's what Ralph taught me. That's what a lot of people don't know about comedy. I'm not saying these mean, nasty, horrible things about myself to degrade myself. I'm saying them because it's true. And Ralph, along with my half brother Brian, those two really taught me to bring out the inner me. Basically, they taught me to stop being a bitch, a scared bitch. If you want to say it, just say it. That's the most important thing to being a comic. If you want to say it already. It's, Brian said it. He was like, man, if you're gonna make a dick joke, make a dick joke. Because this is what he said. Nobody expects a guy in a wheelchair to come on stage and make a sex joke and have people laugh at him. You go to RFD, which is one of the places we do comedy. Ralph, I talked to Ralph, and he's like, yo, if you are a horny bastard and you're in a wheelchair, talk about it. Because again, nobody is going to expect a guy in a wheelchair to say what you're going to say. Because everybody has a certain image, a certain stereotype about being in a wheelchair. You can't have sex, you're defenseless, you don't know anything, well, you don't know much, and you're completely and utterly useless. I am proud to say that I broke those four stereotypes. And I'm not saying that I did it, that I was the first to do it, because many others have done it before me, and many will continue to do it after me. But I'm proud to say that I demolished that stereotype on the comic scene. I am a comic for many reasons. I'm a comic because it's what I'm good at. I'm no longer a Special Olympic athlete. I don't want to be a Special Olympic athlete. There's no reason for it anymore. I've hung my head on my accomplishments. I've done enough. Rapping, I'll try that if I'm drunk. But comedy is what I'm good at. Everybody's always said, Freddie, man, you have these jokes. You should take them to the stage. Who would expect a guy in a wheelchair to talk about his dick, to talk about sex, to talk about how much he wishes he had the libido of Hugh Hefner? Hence the old age. Um, so I've managed to stay a comic through the influences of others, and that's one of my proudest accomplishments to this date is being a comic. Um, like I've always said, my goal is never to outshine those that came before me. My goal is to be in that same level and to thank those that came before me. For instance, everybody knows Freddie Prinze Jr. Everybody knows he's the guy that did the movie I Know What You Did Last Summer. Everybody knows that he's the guy that did Scooby Doo, the two live action Scooby Doo films, and the movie She's All That. Freddie Prinze Jr. That name is not lost on this generation. His father, Freddie Prinze Sr., was a comic and was a damn good comic. If you've ever heard of the TV show, which I'm sure most of you have not, Chico and the Man, one hell of a sitcom. He's one of those people that I learned from, aside from George Lopez. He's one of those guys that I learned from that a stereotype is only bad if you allow yourself to be portrayed badly. Freddie Prinze Sr. talked about growing up in the ghetto. He talked about the life of the impoverished Hispanic community. He talked about the stereotypes of the Hispanic community. Do 9 of us live in a three-bedroom house? Hell yeah. Do 7 of us fit in a three-seated, three-door Camaro? Most likely. And more importantly, do we drink excessively? Hell yeah. So you see, I'm able to take the past, turn it into the present, and keep it relevant in my future. Um, because as a middle class kid who has been protected his entire life, who until recently, at the age of 18, 19 years old, got to discover what being independent is really all about. Yeah, I came out with a lot of anger I guess, for being protected for so long. But you can't blame the people that care about you. So, in a general sense, comedy, comedy essentially changed my demeanor as a person. I don't care about what you think after a stereotype comes out of my mouth. I don't care what you think about a joke that leaves my mouth. Because as a comedian, you're not supposed to care. You're supposed to be able to be comfortable with yourself, comfortable with your humiliation. And that's exactly what I've been the last couple of years. I'm comfortable saying that I'm somewhat of an asshole. I go to Children's Hospital, a very renowned hospital here in DC. I go and I make fun of the clowns that go and cheer up the little kids before surgery. I told the clowns to their face they're not funny. Nobody ever did that. I did that to them. They were so mad they actually walked out. And then earlier last year when I had surgery, staying at Children's for a few days, they saw me. And this time, they walked right by my room. They didn't even bother to stick their head in because they knew exactly who I was and what was going to happen if they stepped in there. So they left. And so I'm proud to say, to conclude all this, I'm proud to say that comedy gave me a way out. And comedy allowed me to see the beauty of a life with restrictions. And at the end of the day, if you're not comfortable with finding the negativity about yourself and doing something about it to turn it positive, then you can't be a comedian. if you are sensitive, being a comedian may not be a good idea. I'm not saying you're not funny, but being a comedian may not be the best course of action. So I know who I am. I know what I've been allowed to do. I know the talent that I've been given is not for nothing. And if I can be one day mentioned in the same breath as these local guys, Ralph Cooper, Alex Starr, Jesse Rivas, and a shout out to my buddy Avi Gould up in New York. If I can be mentioned in the same breath with those guys, and then go on to be mentioned in the same breath with George Lopez, Freddie Prinze, uh, you know, guys like them, Dave Chappelle, guys like them, then I've done my job. And no disrespect to any fellow comic friend of mine that is on this list, or I mean that I know that's on my Facebook. Sorry, I forgot you. It just wasn't enough time. I've been talking for 22 minutes. Uh, but a big thank you to them for not only allowing me to share the stage, but allowing me to find a piece of myself and say, hey, laugh at me, because I'm already laughing. So by the time you get around to laughing at me, it doesn't make any sense. Good night, guys.